Good news for rideshare drivers. That is the title of this video. What up? Once again, it's your boy Tim. What do I mean by good news for rideshare drivers? Well, we're either going to get that, or this could potentially be the end of Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and a lot of the gig economies all together. There's a lot I'm going to be unpacking here, so I'll try to make this expeditiously as possible. However, it could be very informative for those who are not in the know. What I'm talking about is, I'll give you a quote from Marty Walsh, who is the current Secretary of Labor for the United States. While independent contractors have an important role in our economy, we have seen in many cases that employers misclassify their employees as independent contractors, particularly among our nation's most vulnerable workers. That came from the Secretary of Labor. In other words, some businesses are deliberately misclassifying the folks that work for them as independent contractors when they should be employees. And we obviously know there is a huge difference between officially being an employee as opposed to an independent contractor. And there's pros and cons on both sides. So why are we bringing this up? Well, the Biden administration, and this is going to get political, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you want to fall on. You can talk about that in the comments and we can discuss politics. But the Biden administration is rescinding a rule that was put in place under President Trump, which was beneficial for ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft. And the Biden administration, their Secretary of Labor, is now requiring that employers are required to consider whether the employees working for them are an integral part of their business, which basically is suggesting that the people that work for you, how important are they to your business? Now, under the Trump administration, they narrowed that requirement down to just considering if the employees were an integrated part of production. I don't know what production even is when it comes to companies like Uber and Lyft. But we do know what it means to be part of the work. Now, as a driver, if you drive for Uber or Lyft, are you an integral part of the business? There would be no business without you. Without you as a driver hauling passengers from point A to point B, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Uber Eats, these companies would cease to exist. So when someone asks, are you an integral part of the business? Hell yeah, you are. You're the whole freaking business. So it was in their best interest to have it narrowed down to having to consider whether you are an integrated part of production, which was what was taking place under the Trump administration. Well, the Biden administration is making them require you to be viewed as whether you are part of the business. And they're doing this under the guise that what the Trump administration imposed did not comport with the 1938 Fair Labor Standard Act. Now, we can debate back and forth on that because there are pros and cons to being an independent contractor versus an employee. The number one pro to being an independent contractor, you do have more freedoms. You can start work whenever you want. You can quit whenever you want. There is no set schedule like an employee generally works 8 to 4:30 or something like that. You got a set lunch break. You got 2 breaks you take during the day. As an independent contractor, we can drive 9 hours straight and not take a lunch, or we can drive 9 hours and take a 2-hour lunch in the middle. We have a lot of freedom there. However, the issue is this could have worked and been a great idea for drivers and the company alike. Passengers are getting a much better ride than they did in the taxis back in the old days. The problem is Uber and Lyft got too freaking greedy, because what has happened now is the benefit we have of being able to choose when we want to work and when we want to stop, work part-time, full-time, whatever you want, has lost its benefit because the pay is so damn low. If you want to just be a part-time driver, I got another gig. I only want to work 3-4 hours a day. That would be awesome if you could make some money 3-4 hours a day. But because they've lowered the pay so much, in my market, for instance, we make 72 cents base fare per mile. And most of my trips, passengers travel between 1 and 5 miles. So if I get a passenger in my vehicle and they want to travel, say, 5 miles at 72 cents a mile, I'm going to make somewhere around $4 for that passenger. I can do between anywhere, generally it takes me between 3 and maybe 4 trips an hour. I can do about 3 to 4 trips an hour because you got to drive to pick the passenger up, drive them there 1 to 5 miles, get another trip. I can do between, 3-4 trips an hour, maybe 5 if I'm lucky. When you factor in that you're making $3, $4, $5 per trip, even if I do 4 trips in an hour's time, you're talking probably a little bit less than $20 minus fuel. So the point I'm trying to make is for the benefit that we like being independent contractors and only, we being able to choose if we want to work part-time or not. Well, shit, if you're only making $17, $18 an hour and then you got to minus fuel costs out of that, you're not going to make enough money to make this worthwhile working 3 or 4 hours a day. So even though you have the ability to work part-time, the job pays so low that there is no benefit to do that, which is why a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers attempt to work full-time. Because you got to work all damn day to make some kind of money add up. If I'm making $3 to $5 a trip, how many trips I got to do to make a decent amount of money in the course of a day? I very rarely in my market have a trip that pays over $10. Now, you can be hopeful and optimistic that you'll get tips. Yeah. Now, by the way, the reason I said this is good news for drivers is because I'm talking about folks driving for base fare in the majority of Uber and Lyft markets. If you live in a market like Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, somewhere where you're always driving with big surges and there's a hell of a lot of passengers tipping, no, this might not be great news to you. In those markets, you might be able to drive for 3 or 4 hours a day and make a decent wage. If every trip you have is operating with a minimum of $5 surge or more, then yeah, you're doing fine driving 3 or 4 trips an hour for 3 or 4 hours a day, because you're making on average $10, $15 per passenger. But I would submit to you that in the vast majority of markets for ride sharing with Uber and Lyft, that's not happening. You're not getting paid the same in Chattanooga, Tennessee as you are in Chicago, Illinois. Those big surges are not happening in Chattanooga, Columbia, South Carolina, Montgomery, Alabama, Madison, Wisconsin, somewhere. That's not happening. And there are far more of those markets in ride sharing than there are Philadelphia's, DC's, Las Vegas. Those big cities, yeah, some of them folks are not going to like this. But the small, medium-sized markets that are all over this nation, this will be a benefit to them. Because now you're getting out of the arena of being an independent contractor and starting to get some rights. Now, as I stated before, because I used to be a taxi driver back in the early 2000s. I've been doing this off and on since 2014. And I've seen what Uber and Lyft could have been and what they have actually made it become by squeezing the driver over and over and over again so much. I told you my market pays 72 cents a mile. In 2014, it paid $2.20 per mile. So we've went from $2.20 per mile in 2014 down to 72 cents, which is what it is now. That's a huge reduction in income. If you impose labor laws upon drivers, they can't do that to you. That's one of the problems in this game, is that no matter how successful you are, even if you are in larger markets like Los Angeles, Chicago, and Philadelphia, you have no guarantee that Uber or Lyft may not force you to sign some form of change a service contract, and lower your pay. Anyone that has been in this game as long as yours truly or other drivers has been around have been forced to sign those things over and over and over again. Every time you sign one of those, you click where you got to click it, you read the terms of service, you're required to click that to keep driving. Almost every time you do that, somewhere along that long-ass contract is Uber or Lyft doing better and you as a driver doing worse. They didn't go from $2.20 per mile to 72 cents overnight. It kept happening over and over and over again with those contracts. Maybe Uber decided to go from, we get 25% of the fare to 28%, to 32%. Or we're going to impose an extra dollar surcharge on the passengers that you're going to see none of that. All of that has been happening over and over and over again, to the point where your independence as a driver is starting not to look that beneficial because your salaries are getting so low. So even if you're in Chicago and you're like, hell no, I want the pay I'm doing now. I'm doing so well as an independent contractor. You don't know what they may change in the future. Under the system we have now, you have no control over Uber or Lyft making changes to your contract overnight that you as an independent contractor have no freedom to resist. Either you take these new rules or you're off the platform. Which, by the way, is not independent contractor-like. And that's why the Secretary of Labor is suggesting that they are improperly classifying drivers as independent contractors as opposed to employees. I'll give you some more examples. Destination, a huge complaint from a lot of us drivers. Why can't we see the destination we're taking a passenger to? If you're an independent contractor, maybe I'm in Los Angeles and I don't want trips to Orange County. Maybe I'm in New York and I don't want trips to the Bronx. If I'm an independent contractor using my vehicle, be able to make my decisions, I should be able to do that. Driving for Uber and Lyft and Rideshare, and they've taken that right away because you don't know where the hell the passenger is going. The only way to be able to invoke your rights not to go to areas you don't want sometimes puts you in really bad situations, such as swiping a ride, finding out a passenger is going somewhere you don't want to take them, and having to ask them to get out of your vehicle, which can lead to a hostile encounter. That person's been waiting for a ride 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour, and they finally get a car to come, and now this person is telling them get out the vehicle. That shouldn't happen as an independent contractor. You should be able to tell the app, I don't want trips going east this direction, or I don't want trips going that far north. You can't do that. And if you turn down trips, Uber or Lyft starts threatening to remove you from the platform. That sounds a hell of a lot like an employer-employee relationship as opposed to a subcontractor-independent contractor relationship. That's what the Secretary of Labor is talking about. Another issue, shared rides. You pick up one person, and because the passengers are trying to be so cheap, they allow another stranger to get in the car as well. Meaning you got two strangers behind you that don't even freaking know each other, leading to a potential of a more hostile encounter in your vehicle. You as an independent contractor should be able to refuse those type of rides. Uber and Lyft doesn't allow that. Once again, that is more like an employer-employee relationship. Service animals. Maybe you got a nice car. You don't want somebody's pet jumping all over your seats or trying to lick your elbows while you're driving a vehicle. I personally have had that happen. You get pet owners who are not very good at restraining their animals. You're driving down the street, and their dog is jumping all in the front seat and shit like that. As an independent contractor, you should absolutely be able to say, I don't want those type of rides. Maybe you're allergic to pets. As an independent contractor, they kind of have removed your ability to make that choice. Sounds a lot more like an employer-employee relationship. And last but not least, and there are more, but I'll give you this one last, firearms. If you are in a Second Amendment friendly state and you are an independent contractor, why do you have to disarm yourself to drive when the law legally allows you to? If you're found to have a firearm, Uber or Lyft can remove you from the platform, although you violated no laws. That sounds just like an employer-employee relationship. So the point I'm trying to make here is they are treating us like employees when it benefits them. And they referring to us as independent contractors when it benefits them as well. And the Secretary of Labor in the Biden administration is also pointing that out and trying to make changes. So as a result, just this week alone, Lyft, their stocks are down 12%. Uber, 10%. DoorDash, 6%. Uber Eats and all of the rest of them are going to follow suit because the shareholders now realize this shit right here is going to make the cost of labor with these companies go up. In other words, you're going to now have to start treating these people with a little bit more damn respect than you have been. This is why I am suggesting that this is beneficial to drivers. Now, like I said earlier in the video, if you're in areas where there are huge surcharging and all of that kind of crap, then that's different. But you know, in the cab industry, before Uber and Lyft came along, there was never a huge surge. You never had to catch a cab and pay 10, 15 times the ride. That stuff didn't exist. So clearly we could have a ride-sharing industry without having to impose these huge surges, and everybody can profit like they did in the taxi industry. No one denies that taxi drivers on average made a hell of a lot more than Uber and Lyft drivers. If you were a taxi driver, 1980s, 1990s, early 2000s, that was a career. Those folks made enough money for it to actually be considered a career. What we do now, even Uber and Lyft refers to it as a side hustle. In other words, this is something you should have on the side. You shouldn't be doing it full time. It doesn't pay enough to survive. That's the people who you're contracting with telling you that. So if you're trying to make this a full-time job, understand that the people who are paying you are telling you to your face, you shouldn't be doing that. We don't pay you enough to do what you're trying to make this job do. That's all I'm trying to tell you on that. So what do you guys think in the comments? Let me know. I respond to any and all comments, and I also encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We generally talk about this. What do you think? You think this is a good idea for you guys who've been driving? How long have you been ride sharing? Your humble correspondent here, I've stated since 2014. I started driving when Uber came into the market. I was a taxi driver before that, and it was paying a lot more money. But at the time, taxis were paying $3.60 an hour or $3.60 a mile. Uber was paying $2.20. Uber seemed a hell of a lot more lucrative because I didn't have to pay permits. I didn't have to deal with the city and all of the taxes involved in it. You could just drive your own vehicle, and I didn't have to get a radio because the radio, the light on top, I believe, and the stickers on the side was going to cost me like $1,400 or something like that. And the meter as well. All of those devices together was going to cost me $1,500. When I could just drive my own car, it make $2.20 a mile. So it sounded great, but ever since day one, Uber started out by literally lying. I won't even say misrepresenting themselves. Literally lying to drivers about how much they could make. When we started out, they were telling drivers you could make $90,000 per year. It never came close to being a gig economy job. You could make that kind of money. Even now, even a few months ago, Derek Costashawi, or whatever the hell his name is, the CEO of Uber, stated that drivers are making $39 an hour on average. That's not true. Drivers are not making anywhere near $39 an hour in most U.S. markets. I'd say probably 90% or more of drivers doing this are not making $39 an hour. In fact, nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. I just told you, 72 cents a mile. I can do 3 to 5 trips per hour. There's no way I would come close to making $39 an hour. It's just insane. Only way you're going to do that is if you get a lot of very generous passengers that are giving you tips. Something that has nothing to do with your salary you're making from Uber. So I just wanted to run this by you, because I do believe it is beneficial to drivers in the interim and in the future. Because let's say you're driving, you get into an accident or something like that. All of the time you're no longer on the road, you're not making any money. Whereas if you had a job, driving a bus driver or any kind of passenger hauling job, if you get injured while on the job, you can file for unemployment and things like that to cover lost wages while you're not able to work because you're hurt or the vehicle is down or something like that. That's a hell of a lot of benefits you'll get as an employee that are not available as an independent contractor. And of course, like I stated earlier in the video, you're going to lose the flexibility of being able to choose when you want to work and when not. But in my market, I don't see that as a benefit very much, where you're only getting 72 cents a mile. You want to make some money, you got to work all damn day. Anyway, the video went a little longer than I wanted, but let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and I'll catch you in the next video.